Hey, ready for some more Unreal Engine tutorials? I hope so. We have kind of the next step of this process of our escape room. So with that, I'm opening recent projects, escape room demo, and clicking open project. And here we are. Looking down here at the bottom of the content browser, I do want to be probably at the top where this content is where I'm just going to house my things that I'm creating today. And last time we were just adding shapes in here from over by these place actors, these basic shapes to make, just kind of a platform or a level design or a structure that we could look at. And this is what I created with. Today, I want to put in a component where these all just sit here and really do nothing. I want to make a component that we can actually add some code to. We'll do that by right-clicking down here in our content browser and selecting Blueprint Class. There's multiple options here to choose from, and today we're going to use Actor, which is kind of the class that allows us to put in a variety of attributes to. This particular new Blueprint class that I'm going to add, I can call this, I'll just call this door. And puts it down there in our content browser. And then to edit this, we need to double click on that. Double click there. And it opens up a new panel. And it gives us this kind of 3D builder type of view. The controls are pretty similar to that of, the view where we were creating our level. But I find that using the keyboard, it's a lot more touchy on here. So you just kind of have to be careful of that. And in this screen, it allows us to create whatever it is that we want to create, in this case a door. On the left hand side we have components, and we can add a component. And if I select add component, I can find cube. If yours isn't showing up, you can search for it right there. Select cube, and it's going to put it right here in this layout. And I just want to basically use these same tools to kind of create a door. So I'll start off by kind of making it a little bit more narrower, a little bit more narrow. Maybe increase the size a little bit. And using this translate objects tool, I am going to move this up because I want it to be like on the ground. So I think this is one of the hardest parts of this. I don't know if there's a better way, but from my playing around with this, you kind of use this grid to select where the floor is, and then it goes like through halfway through that circle. So if I select here, it looks like $70, like when I look at this over here on the side for location, it looks like 70 in this case is putting that onto the floor. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit lower. for right now, I'm just going to go with it, and if we have problems with it later, then we can always go back and make some changes. As I look at this from the side, it does seem that it's not quite narrow enough. There we go. So that's a little bit more narrower there for me to make a door panel. And that looks pretty good for right now. Again, we can always go back and make changes to this later. It named that as cube because we added a cube there, but if I right click on that and rename it, over there in my components panel, I can call this whatever I want. In this case, I'm going to call this door panel. All right, and I could add other shapes in here too. Each element we put inside of this blueprint class, we're able to make code for. Things can behave differently in this realm. But in this case, I want a simple door panel. So that's good. I'm going to click compile and save. And if I close out of that little panel, this editing panel that I'm working on, you'll see now the door in this case is right there, and it looks the same way that it was how I created it. So if I click and drag this out here, it puts this onto the level, and I'm able to move this object to where I need to move it, and I can resize this. Typically when I'm resizing something, in that I'm going to keep it scaled. We talked a little bit about that with our level design intro. Alright, and this looks okay. If I save and go to play, I can look over here and make sure that it's kind of tall enough for me to walk through, and in this case I think it will be just fine. Alright, so I'm escaping out of that, and now I'm back to my level layout. And now we want to make this to where it is something other than just an obstacle. We want it to be a door. So let's go back down here, double click on door once again, and viewport is the view that allows you to change what it looks like you're constructing it. The event graph is your, I guess, code is what you could say. So sometimes it'll take you back into the event graph. If we select viewport one last time, we're going to add one more component, and this time we want to add it'll probably just be easier to search for it, box collision. Alright, and the box collision is a component that allows us to check to see if things are in contact with it or are overlapping with it in any way. A good rule of thumb, especially when starting this out, is if we make the box collision almost a little bit bigger than the door itself is a good idea. And that way, when we go up to the door, we don't have to walk right up to it before it moves. It moves before we get there to it a little bit. So that box collision, I'm just resizing that. And again, that's something we can always adjust with later, and it'll be fine. Alright, got the box collision on there done. I am going to rename this box collision. I'm going to change the name of that to something that makes a little bit more sense to me later. And I can, I guess, door trigger. Compile and save. Now when I have door trigger, because that's the first thing I want to code, I want to select this. And on the right hand side we have our details, just like with our level layout. When I scroll down, I have these different events. And one of the events that is on here is on component begin overlap. And it tells us there, event calls when something stops overlapping it, or when it begins overlapping it. And that's what I want to do. So I'm going to mouse over that. I'm going to go over to this little plus. And when I click that, it takes me back over to this event graph, and this gives us our first node, our first blueprint node in Unreal Engine. This is how we can do the code with this particular tutorial. Alright, at the top you'll see the compile thing with the question mark. Whenever I see that, I will usually just compile it and save. That's kind of the tip that I need to make sure that I keep on doing a good job of saving my project as I'm working with it. Alright, so on component begin overlap, this is for our door trigger. And when I look at this, there are all these different options that are on here. The one I want to select is other actor. I'm going to click and drag that down here. And you can search for it, or you can also browse for it. Typically I find it easier with these blueprints to search for things because finding it is a little bit cumbersome. I'm looking for cast to first person character. So cast to first person character. And it brings up another node here, and it connects them with these lines on there. And it automatically has the white lines connected, and the other actor is selected to object. The next thing I want to do, and ultimately, so this red box here is looking for something colliding with that door trigger. What if something's overlapping it? And what specifically is it looking for? Our first person character. Cast to first person character, that takes the characteristics of that object that we're looking for, and it gives us access to them. So it's looking for something in that cast to first person character. When I have that there selected, then I'm going to add a timeline. So if I right click here, just anywhere in this area, and I search add timeline, shows up at the very bottom, add timeline. And this particular timeline I'm going to call move door, because when we're overlapping that trigger, we want the door to be able to move like a motion activated door. Come on now. Alright, so we have move door here, and with the cast to first person character we have this white arrow. I'm going to drag and select that and bring it over to where it says play from the start. And then to access my timeline, compile and save, I'll double click on this move door timeline. And it brings us in here to this timeline, which we don't see anything to start with. So what we need to do is we need to go over to where it says add float track, and it brings us a little graph, I guess, and we can name this, and I'm going to call this graph move door value. And on this, we're able to plot like what could happen over a specific point of time. In this case, I want over a period of time, I want that door to move from point A to point B. All right. You can click and add keyframes on this, and if you've ever used Photoshop or anything like that with the animations or like Adobe Animate, this is real similar to that, where you have a timeline, you create a keyframe, you create a second keyframe, and then the difference between the characteristics of keyframe 1 and 2 are how it's going to change over that period of time. So you can click and add them on this. What I typically like to do, since learning about this, I'll right click and add key to curve float 0. All right, and it's going to put it there, and it doesn't matter to me where it puts it, because unless you're just amazingly accurate, you know, with the mouse and getting it in the perfect spot, you can also type in the events up here. So for the time, I'm going to put on this, I'm going to say at 0 seconds, so time 0, I want the value to be at 1, which is the starting location of the door. All right, and with the mouse button or the mouse wheel, I can zoom out and then find where that's at if I want to see where that looks like it's at on the map or on the graph. Okay, then I can right click again and add another key to this graph, and this is going to signify the end of it. So I'm going to select just 1 for the second at this point in time. So 1, and I make sure I click on that correct keyframe. And the value in this case, it kind of depends on what you want the door to do. I want the door to go down through the floor so I don't see it like floating up in the air above me. But you can play around with this and get as creative as you want. I would encourage you to follow this set of directions first. Then after you kind of see how it works, then you can go back through and play around with it. So I'm going to say the value in this case is going to be -1, because I want it to be a door size below when it moves. All right, so that's in a matter of 1 second, it's going to go that distance. Because I'm doing that up here at the length, I want to match this to my time frame. So it says 5 seconds right now. I'm going to move that to 1, and then you see it highlights that graph to where it should be. So compile and save, and we can go back to the event graph now, and it added our move door value right here onto our node. So we know that it took those commands into there properly. So that is saved. The next thing that we want to do is we want to find the move door, and in this graph, and it has move door value. All right, and then also the next thing we want to do is on the left hand side, we have our door panel. We want to drag this door panel component onto our event graph so that we can have access to that. And there's a little blue connection circle. If I click and drag from that, I can go down to or search for relative location. And if I find this, I want to use set relative location. So there's get and there's set, but I want to go set relative location. And it gives us this set relative location node as we move along here. And once we have that done, then we want to select the connect move door, this right here, the connection for move door, update. We want to bring it over here to set relative location. And we have this new location where it's going to move during that timeline. It has all three of these coordinates in one line, and what we actually need to do is we need to split those apart. So if I right click and go to split struct pin, now I can independently choose X, Y, or Z from this. Alright, so with that, I can go on the left hand side for move door value and bring this down here, and if I search in here I can find I want to multiply, so I'm going to type in the star sign on there, and one of the options is float times float. Alright, then I want to bring that location up to Z. And if I compile and save and I select my door panel, over here it says the Z value is 70. So I'm going to multiply it. I'm going to type in 70 down here in this multiplying section. And we should be in good shape. I'm going to click save. I'm going to close out of that. So we're ready to try this out. If I navigate over here, the door does go down. When I move up to it, you'll see that the door automatically goes back up again because we haven't programmed it to close when we're done. So we need to fix a couple of things here. The first one, just for now, is I'm going to select or move this door down a little bit and see if that helps with this portion of it. Alright, so typically we can do something like that, or we can go back in and relook at resizing the door in the viewport and playing around with these values in here. That's one thing you can do, but I think that'll work fine for what I have going on right now. The other thing we need to do is have the door actually close when we're done. So over here on the components, if I select door trigger and scroll down, we already have on component begin overlap. There's another option which is on component end overlap. So what happens when we leave the door trigger? Okay, and this is a pretty easy fix. If I select these blocks here, Control C to copy it, Control V, it allows me to copy all those, and I'll just move this down just a little bit further. And just like above, I want to select other actor and have that connected to the object and connect the two white arrows. But the big difference is, instead of playing from start, I want to reverse from end. So in other words, it's going to do everything that this did but backwards when we leave the trigger. Let's compile and save and go back here and test this again. Okay, there's the door, and then we leave and it goes back up. There's the door, and then it goes back up. And we have a doorway. So with that done, you know, I can actually, you know, I should change the angle to where it doesn't look so bad. There we go. Alright, so we have a door right there, and then just to do this, I'm gonna select one of these layouts, or I could just bring in another cube. I'll just do that. I'll bring in a cube right here, and bring this up to that level. Let's scale it taller, I suppose. And if I scale it from the sides, try to move this over here. You know, I can start kind of building this level out a little bit more. Out towards contacting the door. Actually, I made that too big. I wasn't thinking. Alright, I can move the door. Right now I'm just kind of eyeballing this thing, but let's make it just a little bit bigger. Alright, that looks good. Then I'll copy and paste that. Bring this one over here. To this side. Alright, if I go through and play this, the door's right there. Walk up to the door. We have our doorway. And it opens up through there. So kind of cool. Something that obviously you can play around with. And once you have that door created the way that you want it to be made, the other cool thing is this. You can just click and drag this door over. You know, move these doors to wherever you need them to be. And even copy and paste. And these ones are going to be tiny. This is just for illustrations. But you move over here. Okay, and then you have these doors that are behaving the same way because they're all the same blueprint class and they all act the same. So it's a little bit of work to get started, but once you have that done, then you have those blueprint classes that you can incorporate multiple times into your game, and it works out pretty good. There we have it. A door for our level that you can kind of play around with. You can have the doors, you don't have to just have it go and move on the z-axis. You could have it rise up, you could have it go sideways. You could play with the angle, right? And maybe have some way where it revolves or where it rotates open, something cool like that. But play around with it, see what you can come up with, and we'll keep continuing this on as we have just added another small element to what's going to be our escape room using Unreal Engine and Blueprints. Thanks for watching.